Good morning, Southwest Meat Association. My name's Rick Kimbrell, CEO of Start Clean Legacy, LLC. We provide contract cleaning services, detergents, and sanitizers to dozens of SMA members. I'd like to take a moment to thank our team, 400 strong here in the Southwest. For the last 6 months, they've been working harder than ever, just like the men and women in your plants. Without them, we wouldn't be able to serve the food industry. Our team, like yours, has continued to keep grocery store shelves full and stocked, and we're proud of that. Start Clean's honored to be the sponsor of the 64th Annual SMA Convention. I'm so glad we were able to at least meet in this format. The last time I missed an SMA convention was in 1987, the Orlando convention, when my father, Ray Kimbrell, he either couldn't or wouldn't fork over the money to take us to Florida. I'm thankful that my roots and our Start Clean family roots go back with SMA about as long as this old classic's been on the road. This is the best job I've ever had. Every day we get to build the culture and have the opportunity to create the best job that you've ever had for so many people, helping build careers that coexist with a healthy work-life balance. To do this, we've created the Start Clean Wins Leadership Training Program. This program is mentoring and training all of our existing and future sanitation managers, coaching them to be prepared, consistent, confident, and to follow through as they help manage your food safety. If you see someone walking through your plant with one of these on, stop and encourage them. Again, Start Clean commends all SMA members for their role in putting safe food on the table. The food industry will always be essential. We're proud to be a part of it. I know you are too. Work hard.
Our next presentation is a panel discussion presented by the U.S. Roundtable on Sustainable Beef and moderated by Dr. Wayne Morgan, the President for Protein Products and Operations Services for Golden State Foods. He is headquartered in Georgia. He is responsible for all meat-related business activities, company-wide sustainability initiatives, as well as corporate support for the environment, health, safety, and quality systems. He also currently serves as the chairperson for the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. Wayne has his bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees in animal science from Texas A&M University. Dr. Morgan, I'm going to leave it up to you to introduce the rest of your panelists, and the floor is yours.
Let's see. I probably would. Let's just go as is, and then
yeah, it'll work.
A little bit. So
sounds good.
Letting us participate today, and on behalf of the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, we've wanted this opportunity for a while to get to speak to you guys and share with you what we are doing and what has transpired in this organization and how we think that it relates to your business and how you might be able to get involved. So we have a great panel today, including one of our producer members, as well as a member from our packer processor group and one from our NGO or civil society group, as well as a retail participant. And those participants are Steve Wootan from Colorado Cattlemen's Association, Kim Stackhouse-Lawson from JBS, Chad Ellis from Texas Agriculture Land Trust, and Banks Baker from McDonald's Corporation. I want to start off and just give you a little overview or a little information about the Roundtable. And I'm still struggling here with the slides, but we're going to try to get it fixed. Okay. Can you now see the slide?
No, just a black screen.
Well, good thing is I don't have any notes in here, so there's nothing to really see. So the mission of the Roundtable is to advance, support, and communicate continuous improvement of sustainability across the U.S. beef value chain. We're not a marketing organization. We're not out trying to sell anything. We're out trying to improve sustainability across the U.S. beef value chain, which includes all the constituents and all the stakeholders. Our vision is that the U.S. beef value chain is the trusted global leader in environmentally sound, socially responsible, and economically viable beef. When we look at our membership, you'll see that we have a very, very broad group of members. But if you look here in this kind of second section here, that's our producer group. And we've paid a lot of attention to trying to make sure that we had a strong, robust group of producers, because we believe that the foundation, it begins with them and then works through the rest of the beef stakeholders in our feed yard groups and our packer processors, as well as our retailers. But we also, unlike a lot of groups, we've made it an effort to include civil society. We felt like it was important to have their input and to have their knowledge and experience brought to the table as we try to make improvements in the area of sustainability. So that as we built this organization, we wanted to make sure that we engaged our constituents across the beef value chain, and we included all stakeholders. We wanted to create some sustainability framework. We wanted to help the industry speak in one voice and have a common voice about what we were talking about and how we were going to make improvements. We wanted to make sure that we communicated out the things that we do so that people could, on a voluntary basis, use this framework and build consumer trust. And in addition, we wanted to support projects that built up our objectives and supported our missions. We consciously drew a line at this point and said that we know there's more, and we know there are things that are going to be done outside of what we're doing from a business-to-business standpoint, and that's where we drew the line. When it comes to marketplace implementation, we wanted this to be market-driven from a business-to-business standpoint, and so we felt like we could supply all of the base information, give the guidelines, give some guidance, and help support this these initiatives, but it was going to be ultimately up to the marketplace to drive these improvements. So as we look at the work that we've already completed, we set forth to create sustainability framework in a resource toolbox. We started off by defining sustainable beef. We knew from the very beginning that there was not a lot of agreement on what sustainability was and what sustainability meant. So we came up with a definition that sustainable beef is socially responsible, environmentally sound, and economically viable product that prioritizes planet, people, animals, and progress. We set forth to create some high priority indicators. The 6 high priority indicators represent the areas most important to beef sustainability, taking into account all of our stakeholders. That's the beef producers at the cattle ranch, the feed yards, the packers, the processors, retail, and civil service. When we took all of those views into account, we came up with 6 high priority indicators: water resources, land resources, air and greenhouse gas emissions, efficiency and yield, employee safety and well-being, and animal health and well-being. As we look into each one of those indicators, we created metrics that would help us to measure how we're doing and measure progress in each one of them. In each one of those indicators, we have metrics that are specific to the segment of the value chain that we're talking about. Each one of the stakeholder groups, for the packers, processors, for the retailers, for the producers, and for the feed yard, were able to come together and create their own metrics that they felt would be the most important for them to make progress in their sector. Now, the whole roundtable got input, but it was up to the individual segment to make this decision. We took those metrics and then we built upon those to formulate sustainability assessment guides. And although our acronym of SAGs is not very sexy, these are important documents that give technical guidance to assist in the understanding and implementation of the metrics. As we get to where we are today in 2020, we're now taking all this information that we have and we're trying to move it forward to the next phase of implementation, which is to reach out to the different parts of the industry and hand them this information and hand them all the work that we've done so that they can move it forward into implementation and execution. In 2020, we're working on modules, and the cow-calf module is actually completed, that will give us outreach and development opportunities and training opportunities for beef cattle producers. Next up is our feed yard and auction market outreach program development, and we expect to get that done as well by the end of this year. Concurrently with that, we're also working on developing beef value chain goals. And these goals are going to be what we can point to as aspirational but achievable goals that in the area of sustainability that we can strive for as we work towards continuous improvement. And along the way, we're also going to continue to promote the adoption of our framework and help to get and hopefully drive uptake of the framework. As we look at the 2021 and 2022 and 23, we have ambitious plans to move forward with the development of these modules for our packer processors, our retail and food service, as well as to continue to support the framework adoption. I'm going to hand it off now to one of our first panelists, is Steve Wootan. He's a cattle producer, and I'll let Steve introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his operation.
Thank you, Wayne, and thank you to the Southwest Meat Association for giving us this opportunity to talk about the sustainability issue and where we fit within the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. And Kim, are you setting up? Thank you. Beatty Canyon Ranch is located in southeast Colorado. We're a 6th-generation family operation that is a cow-calf operation. We have felt like for multiple generations that care of the resources and care of the cattle is paramount, but our biggest push over the last 20 plus years has been the realization that we need to be producing a product that isn't just for the next buyer in the supply chain, that's still important, but to ultimately address the consumer demand and need for a quality eating experience, as well as the other issues relative to meat animal consumption, like the environment and animal welfare and stewardship. So we've been engaged in that, and 5 years ago when the U.S. Roundtable was formed, it fit in our family philosophy, and that prompted us to become members. What you see here is an example of the land resources that Wayne was talking about, and within our operation and many others like it, we measure annually what we're getting done out there and making good decisions based on the information we glean back from various levels of monitoring and measuring what's happening on our resources on the ranch. In the 1960s, this 45,000 acre family operation changed from open range and worked with scientists at universities as well as the Society of Range Management to begin to make changes within the ranch for a better distribution of cattle. Kim? This is another example of the data that's taken. Next slide, please, Kim. We've incorporated a rotational grazing plan that the goal of that plan is to provide an adequate amount of rest time for plant recovery. But that has greater benefit than just that rest and recovery time. It's an integral part of soil, water, mineral cycle. It's an integral part of the wildlife part of the operation and overall health. It's essential to what we can achieve in a short grass, semi-arid environment for carbon sequestration from healthy plants. So there's a huge cycle of systems that are all interrelated to using a rotational grazing plan. Next one, please. Within all businesses, especially in family businesses, there has to be a succession plan. And within the indicators that Wayne was mentioning, a succession plan is essential in it, that what we're doing is transferable. We would like it to be in the next generation, and we see the potential in our particular family for that. But even a succession plan that if it's going to pass out of the family and onto a new ownership, that there are tools made available at that transfer point. Please, Kim. We're a diversified operation. Cattle income is the biggest portion of our income, but we have alternative income centers that provide us additional income. But because there's such an abundance of wildlife on the ranch, not only do we hunt the wildlife, but they're an integral part of our management plan, whether it's water distribution, grazing management, careful consideration of where we are during the spring when babies are being born. So that's written into our plan as part of it. Next couple of slides, please, Kim. They're just examples of species on the ranch. This is an issue that's very near and dear to my heart, and it is an important issue with the consumer, and that's the animal health and well-being. We take very high pride in the fact that we treat our animals with a high level of respect. We're very conscious of their overall health, their activity on the ranch, and this example of first calf born this year, we were out there monitoring and taking care to make sure that everything came along fine. Next slide, please. Part of the animal health and welfare is working with the Beef Quality Assurance Program because it gives us such a great toolbox to meet the demands through the supply chain, whether it's injection sites or stockmanship stewardship or judicious antibiotic use. This is the toolbox that provides us producers the knowledge to do this right so it fits within the supply chain. Next one, please, Kim. We're very committed to gentle cattle. How we move our cattle is with horses. We live in a very rough, rugged environment. The horses are the best tool to move the cattle. We do like horses. They're part of our recreation, but we feel like gentle movement, quiet movement, and selection genetically for gentle cattle has the highest rewards for us as well as on down the supply chain. We feel like gentleness is genetic, but it's also planned and with purpose moving forward. Next one, please, Kim. So the water resources runs closely with the land resources in our operation as to which is the most critical. And I guess I have to say that water resources is the most critical. We live in a semi-arid, almost desert environment, 7 to 14 inches of rainfall. We're in the second year of a drought in our ranch right now and in our region of Southeast Colorado. So we have put considerable amount of investment into distribution of water using underground pipelines and treatment like this of invasive species that are robbers of water. Tamarisk is a plant that robs water from the waterways, but it's also a state and nationally listed weed, and we've invested quite a bit of time in control of that. Next slide, please, Kim. An example of us moving through a riparian zone and utilizing a riparian zone and then back out of it. You can see that there's minimal erosion in the waterway there. Next slide, please, Kim. This is why I'm so proud of our industry, and this is why I'm personally and our family is invested in the U.S. Roundtable, because of the success that we've had as an industry in our environmental stewardship, in our sustainability, in our stockmanship. And I look forward to continuing to work to get better and to help producers achieve that. Next slide, please, Kim. Aside from the consumer, the next best thing that we're looking at is seeing that these young people have an opportunity to continue the tradition of raising and growing great beef. Next slide, please. And I thank you all for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about Beatty Canyon and why being a member of the sustainability and the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainability is important to our business. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And hopefully we'll have a little time for questions at the end, but let's move on. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kim Stackhouse-Lawson from JBS.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for being on. Really, you know, when Wayne asked us to prepare for this, he asked us to really talk about why sustainability, or why the U.S. Roundtable was important to our business, and then also mention how the business approaches sustainability. And I guess there's no better way to describe why the Roundtable is important to us than to look at the panel members that are before you today, and just the ability to build relationships and understand shared challenges and shared opportunities across the value chain. So our relationships that we've developed with Wayne, with Steve, with Banks, with Chad, those are the relationships, the learnings that we have from them, the opportunities that we're able to really move forward with together. That's what's the most meaningful to JBS as it relates to the Roundtable. Sustainability is also paramount to our business, and we've worked very hard to ingrain it in our culture. We fundamentally define it as continuously improving social responsibility, economic viability, and environmental stewardship. And it's really, again, guided by our mission to be the best in all that we do. And it's absolutely a part of our culture here. We've got 5 priority areas that we focus on, and you'll notice they're very much in line with the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, and that's no accident. We look to our stakeholders to help define our priority areas through materiality assessment. And we've set pretty aggressive goals. These are all just internal goals. We're working on supply chain initiatives through efforts like the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, but we do publicly report our internal goals, and again, report each year on our tracking to those goals. So similar to our priority area, those goals are in environment, they're in team member health and safety, and then also with our supply chain and in animal welfare. As I mentioned, currently our supply chain targets and supply chain initiatives are all across the global network, driven through these multi-stakeholder regional roundtables. And it's actually across multiple proteins. So you'll see I've got a poultry logo up here. We also work in the pork space in the same way with our supply chain. So this value chain collaboration, where the entire supply chain really comes together to achieve a common goal and to work towards opportunities and solutions, is really where we see tremendous progress taking place within the value chain. Everything's published for us, of course, through our digital reports. And with that, Wayne, I'm going to keep us on time here and turn this over to my good friend, Chad Ellis.
Thank you, Kim. Like as everyone, I'm really excited to be able to kind of share our story here at Texas Ag Land Trust and kind of why we're part of the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. Our mission from the Texas Ag Land Trust, it's really, it's pretty simple. Our goal is to keep working lands working. We really want to help empower the producers to find solutions and tools for them to be better tomorrow than they are today. And it's really based around conserving our Texas heritage of our agricultural lands, natural resources, and our wildlife habitats. Next slide, please. We were founded in 2007 by leaders of the Texas Farm Bureau, Texas Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association, and the Texas Wildlife Association, really about this concern of our loss of our ag lands. And again, about trying to keep our working lands working and finding solutions for our producers moving forward. We hold around two dozen easements, around 234 acres here in Texas. Next slide, please. Our work from the Texas Ag Land Trust is really about protecting those agricultural lands. One of the tools in the toolbox is that easement. We help partner with producers, provide them that opportunity to keep their land and their legacy down to that next generation, as Steve Wootan talked about earlier in his presentation. The other aspect for us is really this outreach of public awareness, right? We have our public is further removed from agriculture, and we're trying to promote and get them to understand this private land stewardship, public benefit, and those components. And we do that from outreach, by policy, and fundraising as well. Next slide, please. Our philosophy, or our guiding principles, is really what drew me to TALT. It's really about our easements, and our work is those producers know their operation, know their land better than anybody. Our easements do not prescribe management practices. We let them have that freedom to operate how they see fit best. We also, our easements don't add public access. Those private property rights are important for us. We don't target these properties to kind of add into that portfolio from our end as well. And we really encourage, these working lands and keeping ag businesses moving forward. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the big why is TALT organized? Why is TALT part of USRSB? And it really comes around this, right? Our changing of Texas is not the Texas it was 10 years ago. We've almost doubled our population in the last 10 years. We're 28 million people. And when we talk about landowners, we're less than 1%. Our rural communities are 10% of the population. Next slide. We also kind of overlay this aspect of fragmentation. We've increased in those last 10 years. We've had over 20,000 new farms. So we have that middle size operation is selling out to either smaller operations or larger operations are gaining. This has impacted over 6 million acres here in Texas. And next slide, please. Beyond the fragmentation, we really look at the loss of our working lands. We've lost over 2 million acres, and we're losing ground every day. And so we have to find these solutions to kind of keep everything intact from a business component. Next slide. Also, we overlay this aspect of our demographics, right? We're over 60 years of age. This statement here is important for all of us listening, is that, in the next 20 years, I would say even less than that, we're going to see the largest transfer of wealth and land in the history of our country. And it's going to have a huge impact. Next slide. So when we think about all of these components, really why we're a part of it, it's about keeping our working lands working for that next generation. It really starts around beef sustainability. And beef sustainability is good business. It's a business that's in collaboration with the whole industry. So thanks again for your time, and looking forward to questions.
All right, thank you, Chad. So our last panelist will be Banks Baker from McDonald's. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Chad. Thank you for having me here today. I appreciate it. Next slide, please. So I'm Banks Baker. I'm on McDonald's U.S. sustainability team, and I focus on our protein sustainability. So really appreciate the opportunity today so that I can share some of the work that we're doing around our U.S. sustainability initiatives, and then also how important our work at the U.S. Roundtable is for being able to achieve those. Next slide, please. So I think everybody on the line likely knows McDonald's. We are the world's largest restaurant company, and for so long, our scale was essentially equated to being bad. And because we are so large, we had to have been making some type of bad impact. And we actually turned that on its head and we announced a sustainability platform called Scale for Good. Next slide, please. So in Scale for Good, we understand that because of our scale and because of our size, we can leverage that to make profound improvement and to work with industries to achieve goals that make both our customers and our investors feel more comfortable about our business. So sustainability at McDonald's, it's much more, it's really about making our customers feel good about eating at our restaurants, but also about ensuring the long-term availability of the ingredients that end up making our iconic products. So due to the short time, I'm not going to be able to go through our whole Scale for Good platform here, but I am going to be focusing on some of our beef sustainability, climate action, and our animal welfare programs here today. Next slide, please. So McDonald's was actually the first global restaurant company to set a science-based target initiative greenhouse gas reduction target. So what that means is that we're going to be working on two different phases. One at our restaurants and our offices to reduce our emissions by 36% by 2015. And we've actually recently completed some of the largest renewable energy purchases within the restaurant space that are helping us achieve that at our restaurants. We're also working on energy efficiency on the equipment within the restaurants, and then also some of the lighting as well. And I think that's an important thing to just highlight, is that we are working in our supply chain as well, but this is something that we're also doing at our restaurants, and we're holding ourselves accountable. So the second piece of that is in our supply chain. We've committed to reducing our supply chain greenhouse gas emissions by 31% by 2030, and that is ambitious. Next slide, please. So next, I'm going to go through some of our beef sustainability programs and then also our animal health and welfare programs. Next slide, please. So here are some of our 2020 aspirational goals, and we're finalizing most of these here. I'm going to be able to go through these just a little bit and you get a flavor for them. But there's also more information on our website if there's anything that I didn't cover and we weren't able to cover them with questions today. Next slide, please. The first one's around accelerating industry progress. And I just got done talking about McDonald's scale and how large we are. And that also means that as I continue to share some of the sustainability commitments that we have, it means that we can't go out and buy just a niche product. We literally need to work within industry to make sure that there's availability at McDonald's scale. And that's why it's so important for us to be involved with roundtables such as the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, because we're allowed to work with all of these organizations that you see here to make the progress that benefits not just our business, but also the whole industry itself. Next slide, please. So we also had a commitment around sharing knowledge and tools, and this is one that's going to be increasingly important as we trying to reach our greenhouse gas reduction targets. We're going to be working to incentivize the creation, adoption, and use of grazing management plans that we know provide both an increase in producer economics, but then also the environmental outcomes that we're seeking. Next slide, please. We also have a great flagship farmer program, and this is one of my favorite things that I get to work on at McDonald's. And we've identified flagship farmers in our top 10 beef producing countries all over the world. And essentially, this is a program that's meant for a peer-to-peer sharing opportunity. And when McDonald's tries to start sharing different types of production practices, of course, our core competency is around running restaurants and selling cheeseburgers and French fries. And whenever we're able to start working with some of the leaders in the industry, then it allows us to be able to start incentivizing and share the practices that are both good for the environment and good for these producers. So we do have two great flagship farmers, Gary and Sue Price in Blooming Grove, Texas of 77 Ranch, and then also Lyle and Garnett Perman of Rock Hills Ranch of Lowry, South Dakota. And they just provide great examples for the positive impacts that beef can have on the environment. We've all seen some interesting news over the last couple of years, and I think this is a really important part is we understand that beef does play a critical role into managing a thriving food system. Next slide, please. We also are working around pioneering new practices. So we provided $4 million in research funding to a collaborative research group that was looking at the possibility and the application of cow-calf grazing and grazing management to sequester carbon within the soil, and if so, by how much. So these are some really impressive results that we're starting to see come out, and we should have some additional videos and research to share on that shortly. Next slide, please. So I know we're short on time, so I'm not going to go through all of our animal health and welfare commitments, but I did want to make sure that everybody understood that animal health and welfare is core to our business. It's something that's an expectation, and it's a responsibility that we have as one of the largest protein purchasers in the world. So we do have a decades-long commitment to animal health and welfare, and we've been working with experts like Dr. Temple Grandin since the 1990s. And we have historic leadership in this space, and it's something that we continue to do today. It's foundational and core not only to our business, but to our customers and our investor expectations. Next slide, please. So we also have some antibiotic policies. This is something that we get quite a bit of questions about from our shareholders and our investors. But it's always important when we get opportunities to speak with industry to kind of level set what our policies are and what they're not. So all of our policies, the antibiotic policies, do focus on responsible use. So these are not no antibiotic ever policies. They're not natural. They're not a natural program policy. And they're in line with our decades-long commitment of animal health and welfare that I discussed just a moment ago. So in that, we understand that if an animal is sick, they need to be treated, and they need to be treated expeditiously. So we do not restrict the use necessarily of antibiotics. We have removed antibiotics important to human medicine in our U.S. broiler supply chain in 2017. We did release a beef and dairy beef antibiotic policy in 2018 that we're proactively working towards right now. And we're in the early development phases of a pork policy that should be announced within the next year. Next slide, please. So finally, just shared quite a bit of information here, but these are things that as the end user, we don't necessarily have control. Of course, McDonald's does not own any ranches or farms. We don't produce beef. We don't process beef. We need to work with our industry partners and our suppliers to be able to achieve these goals that allow our business to thrive and to continue. Most of what I just shared with you today, they closely align with the U.S. beef industry sustainability framework. If all of you haven't seen that, I highly recommend that you go to the website here and take a look. But the Roundtable allows us to have that cross-collaborative effort to use the high tide to rise all boats. Next slide. So that is all I had for you today. I'm hoping that we get some good questions at the end. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you, Banks. And so, you know, as we wrap up here, we got this opportunity to get in front of you guys. And before we answer questions, we just want to be proactive and tell you what we're looking for as an organization and how you can help in this sustainability journey. And first of all, we encourage everyone to, you know, to continue to utilize good science, engage the influencers out there. But beyond that, we want to establish a culture that shows that we care and that we're committed to improvement. We're never going to, you know, defeat every naysayer, but we want to be proactive in showing that we care. Kim, can you advance one, please? And also, we want to invite each of you to get involved with the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. We've been working as an organization for over 5 years now, and we feel like we've made a lot of progress. We've done a lot of good things, but we're trying to broaden the scope and to bring in more players that can be a part of this organization and that can contribute to this effort of continuous improvement. Like the Southwest Meat Association, we had to do our General Assembly this year online, virtually, and next year we look forward to getting together face-to-face at our General Assembly in Kansas City on April 28th and 29th. But in between now and then, there are plenty of opportunities to get involved. And if you'd like more information about the Roundtable, you can go to usrsb.org, or feel free to contact myself or any of the members of the panel today, and we would love to tell you more about the organization. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask a first question. We've got just a little bit of time. I think we have about 15 minutes, so we'll try to answer some questions from the field as well. But I want to start off and just ask each one of the panelists to talk a little bit about, what are the questions that you're being asked by various audiences, whether it's activist groups or other producers or consumers or shareholders. In terms of sustainability, what are the questions that you're getting asked? And Steve, if you want to go first, that'd be great.
Wayne, I think the questions that I get asked from especially my sector, the producer sector, where we're dealing with the live animal and independent businesses, 700,000 independent businesses in the United States, is sustainability really that important? Is it really a part of what the consumer is driving back? And the answer to that is it is absolutely. It's the concern of a modern consumer that's aware of food supply and has concerns about where their food comes from, how their food is sourced. Is it coming in a way that meets their social standards? And it's important to us, every one of us, that we take that into consideration and be sure that we're providing a product, especially for us in the beef, because that's center of everything for us, that we're meeting our consumers' needs. It's changed the way we do business, and it's caused a lot of questions as producers try to get themselves wrapped around what the consumer wants of them.
Great, thank you, Steve. Kim, from a packer processor standpoint, what are you being asked?
Yeah, so I think that we get a lot of questions around sustainability from both sides of the supply chain, which is probably why, from a roundtable value perspective, it's just so valuable for us to have everyone together so that we can talk. We hear a lot of concerns from the supply chain, similar to what Steve described, producers who might be leery of the word or feel like, it might be more of a government mandate. So some pretty extreme views, to producers who really are excited about the opportunity to tell their story and to talk about beef in a really proactive way. And then on the other side of that, we hear from customers, right, who are challenged by many of the negative perceptions about beef from consumers, and they really want to know what the industry is doing, or how beef is positively influencing the environment or social considerations. And so really being able to speak with one voice is incredibly important, and to demonstrate, Wayne, as you pointed out, kind of a culture that I think has really been ingrained in our supply chain and our industry for a long time. But the expectations around demonstrating that are different today, and I think will continue to be elevated in importance as we move through COVID and really focus on, meeting that consumer where they're at from a value perspective.
Great. So Chad, from the civil society standpoint, what do you see there?
Yeah, no, thanks, Wayne. I get multiple questions, Wayne, I think, and asked from the civil society. I get some of those questions from a producer of, is this truly a roundtable, right? Is it the civil society, which is, how we have it structured within the roundtable is our academic university researchers, as well as our NGOs together as one? Is it, the civil society and big businesses, coming together and driving this? And that's, far from the truth. And that's the great thing about how USRSB was developed. It is a true roundtable. There's equal representation around it. As Kim and Steve and Banks and Wayne, how we've all talked about it, it's true collaboration and working together in partnership, which has really helped and our success and the things we've done. So it's, those are some of the questions that I get, Wayne, that, is great from day one of how we set up that it's a true. And then when we look at those members and we've seen some of those screenshots today of all the members within the roundtable, majority of those members are producers. And I wear multiple hats, as all of us on this webinar today are. And so I also represent a cow-calf operation and the National Grazeland Coalition, which is a producer-led organization, which we're members of as well. So I'm glad to be part of it and honored to be part of it. Thanks, Wayne.
Great. And so we'll move on to Banks now. Banks, everyone's always interested to hear what McDonald's has to say. I'm sure that y'all have a lot of insight into what people who are buying your products think. So what are they asking about sustainability?
Yeah, Wayne, being at the end of the supply chain, we get just about every question that you can imagine. Most recently, even just the last couple of weeks, I've really gotten lit up with quite a bit of questions around beef and about enteric methane emissions. And even from some members of my family that have reached out and said, hey, I know we're always talking about greenhouse gas emissions, with McDonald's being one of the largest purchasers and sellers of beef, are those at odds? And I think that's something that we really do want to talk more about, because although there are some emissions there's also a high potential for cattle to also sequester carbon. And we see agriculture as also being a part of the solution. And it's always great whenever you can get a little bit deeper than a 15-second tweet with people that are really trying to learn, and you can share the cattle spend most of their lives on marginalized land that's not suitable to grow kale or lemongrass. So that's something that we really like to share off, is that agriculture can really be a part of the solution. And the fact that the cattle are on the land makes it healthier, not worse off.
Great. That's great insight. We got a couple of questions that were kind of specific to you, so I'll let you address these now. How's McDonald's working to connect and do business with smaller food companies? And right along with that, doing business with McDonald's from a small processor standpoint seems to be overwhelming. Any advice or suggestions for the smaller producers or processors that are in our audience today?
Yeah, and great question. Unfortunately, that's not quite my expertise, but we do have a comprehensive, what we call our approved supplier list. And we did have to add on to that significantly during COVID and during some of the meat shortages that we've seen as a result of the pandemic. So we are looking at how we can create more resiliency in our supply chain, both through some of these sustainability initiatives that I shared today, but then also through our actual supply sources. And should we be looking at diversifying so that we can make sure that when we need beef at our restaurants, that we can get it?
Great, thank you. I'll answer the next question. The question was, how can my company use what your organization has developed in a practical way, and what will it do for me or us? Well, I'll just start off and say that on the website, you can find our materials, our sustainability framework, and those are available for anyone to review and to utilize. They are specific by sector, so there you can go in and see the sector for a processor, and it will give you some guidelines and some metrics that you can look to that will help you to do a self-assessment of your process and identify areas that you might be able to make improvements in. So far as the how can you use this in a practical way, they are very practical and down-to-earth applications in the metrics. And in regards to what it will do for you and for us, We hope that it will spark conversation. It will spark thought on your behalf as to how you can make improvements. And maybe it'll open your eyes to some areas that you hadn't previously considered. I would just go one step further and again extend my invitation that we want more participants. We've done a lot of work to get to where we are, but we're at the point now of execution and uptake. And we want to invite people of all sizes, of all businesses that utilize beef to come together and be a part of the conversation and help us formulate how we get even further and how we even drive more change. Got another question here in regards to how does a U.S. Roundtable help you address these questions about sustainability? So I'll just throw that one out there. Steve, how does the Roundtable help you address questions?
Well, I'm not sure if it helps us address questions, but it's been a toolbox that's developed over the last 5 years for any part of the supply chain to access for information regarding the issue of your part of the greenhouse gas emissions, your role in water issues relative to quality and quantity of water, our role in land use and environment from land use, whether it's in the city and the footprint of a McDonald's or the footprint of a ranch and its balance in that systems, that total systems in the natural environment. So it's the toolbox that we've developed, and then the information going forward as we continue to monitor our industry from producer to retailer and continue to produce numbers like what I showed in my slide about the changes that have already occurred over the last 10 to 15 years, and expect to see improvement in those changes going forward in the next 10 years.
Thank you. Thanks. Chad, you want to weigh in on how you can how the Roundtable has helped you to address these issues?
Yeah, Wayne. So I look at it. It's we're the full supply chain when we think about the Roundtable, from Steve on the ground all the way, kind of end product, and everybody in between. And even when you think about someone like myself with the NGO, we're still a business. And it looks a little different, but we all have to work together. And so some of these tools, and I think you said it very well, Wayne, is that some of these tools are just helping you through the thinking process, the thoughts of better business. And they're simple. One of the key things, and you stated also, Wayne, early on, is that all of these tools were developed by the sectors for that sector. And I think that is a key point and a component that we all want to hear from our own peers with our area. And it was, those peers that helped develop these tools. And they're the better ones to understand the uptake and what's needed for that sector. So I think is a key point. You're muted, Wayne.
I am. We just have a couple of minutes before we wrap up, so I just want to give everyone one last chance. We'll start with Steve, and if there's any parting advice or information that you'd like to give, keeping in mind that we're talking to a group of processors and throughout Texas and the Southwest. So anything you'd like to tell them about the Roundtable or anything about sustainability in general? Steve.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the Southwest Meat Association for giving us a chance to share on this panel. And I would speak to them in general that this organization in 5 years has surpassed what others have been spending a decade in other countries and in other locations trying to address the sustainability. It's never failed to take on challenges, accept them, and then work through solutions, and then have a long-term forward-looking. And I would encourage processors in attendance here to consider joining and being a part of the conversation. Come to the table, help us with this work that we're trying to do. The more input that we have, the better the product that we push out the door at the end of the day. And I'd love to see more processors joining and being a member of the U.S. Roundtable. Thank you again.
Thanks, Steve. Kim?
Yeah, again, thank you for having us. The one thing that I think is important about the content that the Roundtable has delivered is that it really should give processors a place to start. And so if you haven't started a sustainability program, the framework should give you a great guide and guidepost by which to follow, and should also allow you to really hone in and focus on what's important to a variety of stakeholders. So it's a nice way to kind of get a low-cost entry into developing a sustainability program. And then if you have any specific questions, I think there's certainly all of us on the panel who will be willing to help, but strictly speaking, kind of processor to processor, I'll offer up myself and Wayne. Certainly from a JBS perspective, we don't view this area of sustainability as competitive at all. So if you do have questions about starting a sustainability program, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, Kim. Chad?
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. And, again, just thanks everybody for allowing us to talk. Unfortunately, I was hoping to get to, meet in person in this in San Antonio. That's where I'm based. Again, doors always open, love to help and visit from the perspective of you guys. And I'll just leave it at that. It's a great organization and we need more thought process. We go back to some of my slides that I think are important, especially this association where you guys are located, and we look at the just demographics and the change of Texas. It's important for all of us agricultural entities to work together to find those solutions to keep our freedom to operate. So again, appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Chad. And wrapping it up, Banks.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you everybody for having me and everyone on the panel. It's always great to share the work of the Roundtable. And then also, thanks for putting dinner on my plate. I know how hard everybody works to make sure that our food system operates, and we are grateful. I also just want to kind of just hit that again, is that sustainability, this isn't a fad, and I think this is a way for sustainability is a way for all of us to keep our businesses relevant and thriving. So again, point you back to the Roundtable website. There's a lot of great resources there. And you now have kind of a face to several members there. If you need anything, feel free to reach out. Part of this is working together to make progress. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. And thank all of our panelists. And again, I'll just echo the fact that we have made the commitment that sustainability is a non-competitive issue, and all boats rise when we all do well, just like food safety. And so feel free to reach out to myself, and know that we all reach out to each other on this topic, and we can all continue to grow and to learn from each other. And the invitation has now been made to you to be a part of it, and we would welcome you to accept that invitation. So with that, Dr. Harris, I'll hand it back to you.
All right, thanks, Wayne. And Steve, Kim, Chad, and Baker, we really appreciate that. I know I learned a lot about what you're doing from that, and I appreciate the fact that you guys, the one question that I had to ask, you addressed it there in your closing comments, so I won't have to ask it now. And I was just going to talk about the question about whether, this being not a competitive issue, much like our industry has approached food safety as being a not competitive issue. I think it's very appropriate that sustainability falls within that same kind of category.
Crimson Chemicals is proud to be a platinum sponsor for the 64th Annual Southwest Meat Association Convention. Crimson Chemicals was founded in 2002 by Robert Miller. Crimson is located in Fort Worth, Texas, and services customers throughout the Southwest and across the United States. Our primary focus is food safety intervention chemicals. Our goal is to provide the most effective intervention program with accurate coverage and competitive pricing. Within the beef and pork processing areas, Crimson Chemicals offers a complete line of food safety solutions. That line includes antimicrobial intervention chemicals such as acidified sodium chloride, peracetic acid, bromine, and lactic acid. Chemical dosing systems and sanitation chemicals and equipment are also available. Additionally, we offer a complete line of items for poultry processing as well as further processors. Our dedicated service team works with customers to design and install custom dosing and application equipment such as the one seen here. Real-time data and remote system access can also be included with our equipment based on each customer's needs and goals. Crimson Chemicals is always growing to meet the needs of our customers. With recent COVID-19 issues, we have expanded our product line to include personal protective equipment such as gloves and masks, as well as various hand and hard surface sanitizers. Our latest line extension is a complete line of food-grade lubricants for all of your implant needs. To find out more about Crimson Chemicals or learn how we may be able to help your operation, visit our website at www.crimsonchemicals.com or call our office at 817-246-7700.